Hello and welcome to DNQ Football for our preview for Indonesia versus Thailand. We're not going to be able to do a full watch along today, but that means that you can stick with us as we go through the build-up for this match, and then you can hop over. I've put the link into the YouTube video for the live match as well, which kicks off in just under 45 minutes. And this is a huge game in the context of the AFF Championship, but perhaps not as huge as we thought it was going to be. With the greatest of respects to the Philippines, they're very likely to go out. So this Indonesia versus Thailand game, basically Indonesia play Thailand, and then on the final match day they will play the Philippines. But they are going to be 3 points clear of them with a better goal difference no matter what. So it's unlikely for Indonesia that defeat in this game would really mean, early exit from their perspective. The kind of weird aside on that is that actually if Cambodia were to win in the later kickoff today and beat Brunei, which is probably what's expected, and Indonesia were to win today, you'd end up in a situation where Thailand and Cambodia played each other and were on the same points going into the final game. And so Thailand could go out in the group stage. Truthfully, and the most likely, is that whoever wins this game is going to be fine, and whoever loses this game is going to be fine, and a draw would equally be okay because they'll probably both also win in their final game. So perhaps the bigger question, the wider question around this fixture is, what does it mean for their semi-final draw? Because I'm going out there and I'm assuming that on the final day Thailand beat Cambodia and Indonesia Indonesia get through, basically draw or beat the Philippines. I'd probably expect them to beat the Philippines, but even a draw would probably be enough in that game. And so you have to look to kind of Group B and think, okay, how is that going to shape up? And how does that impact this game as well? Because of course, whoever comes second is most likely to face Vietnam. Vietnam playing Singapore and Myanmar in their last two games, and they've already played 2-1-2 against Laos and Malaysia. So potentiality that Singapore get through the group, but they've got their two toughest games in Vietnam and Malaysia coming up, and Malaysia as well with their final game against Singapore. As we've already spoken about, we'll try and do a watch along for that because that is the real head-to-head game for that one to see who comes through, probably second, but Vietnam are going to top that group, and everyone will want to avoid Vietnam if they can. So a win today doesn't necessarily guarantee top of the group, but it's highly likely that both of those teams will be pushing to finish top of Group A to avoid Vietnam in the semi-finals. So how do I think this one's going to go? Well, I've seen the lineups for this game. They're as expected. I'll run them through now. Once again, apologising for pronunciation, but Indonesia team Winata, I'm just going to do it in number order, keeper first and number order. So Winata in goal, Sayuri, Jordi Amat, Sulaiman, Egi, Dendi, Pratama Arhan, Irianto, Asnawi, Fakhruddin Arianto and Mark Anthony Clock as well. So they're going to go with their similar setup, five at the back. It's good to see Arhan back in the team. Excuse me. I think that Arhan's going to be pretty crucial in this one down that left-hand side. One of my favourite players, obviously best young player at the last tournament. So it'll be really good to see what he can do in this match as well. And for Thailand, and this is where my pronunciation is going to get wrong, so I do apologise. They've got Kittapong in goal, Salasak, Tiraton, Pansa, Sarach, Tirasil Danda, Fala, Karman, Burirat, Ekanik Panya and Chanarong up front as well. Sorry, Chanarong in midfield as well. So those are the two lineups and really key players to watch out for. Well, from an Indonesia perspective, the battle that will be really interesting in this one is going to be the battle between Tirasil Danda and Jordi Amat. Because Jordi Amat has added a real level of quality to that back line for Indonesia, and to be honest, that is a back five that is to be reckoned with. If they were to have kind of the full strength squad with some of the other players, potentially Elkan Baga in there as well, he obviously wasn't allowed to be released, but if he was in there and they had Jordi Amat, you'd be looking at a really, really solid back five for this game. Unfortunately, he's not there, but it's still a pretty solid defensive line, and that's going to be a big challenge because Dangda for Thailand, equally one of the players to watch out for. That's going to be a huge challenge. Dangda, again, he keeps scoring despite being 34 years of age, despite having played in this tournament what seems like hundreds of times, he still finds himself on the score sheet. And I do think he will, despite the good defence, I think he'll get on the score sheet again today, which, despite, you know, being a bit of an Indonesia fan in some ways, that would be excellent to see if he just keeps kind of opening up the gap between him and the rest of the chasing pack in terms of goals scored. Other players to watch out for Indonesia, though, you always have to watch out for Witan Sulaiman and Egy in the way that they can kind of command a game. Egy's been really impressive in this tournament. I know he's hyped up by a lot of Indonesia fans, and kind of rightly so. He's been doing extremely well. But I think that Witan Sulaiman really is going to be important in this one as well. Kind of back to front role, getting forward as much as he can. You can see in the chat we've got in the votes, we've got people slightly favouring Indonesia so far, no one back in the draw. If you do happen to watch this, pop your vote in there, it's always good to see. Don't forget to drop a like, and if you're new to DNQ, hit that subscribe button. As I've said before, we're not going to be able to do the full watch along today, so I do apologise for that, but I thought I'd hop on and do a quick preview for this massive, massive game. For Thailand, ultimately, it's a kind of similar story to what you'd expect, really. I expect them to play good football, I expect this to be a very good footballing match. But really, when you've got Dangda up front, it's a bit of a cheat code. Any set pieces that they get, any chances that they get to push forward, I do expect Tirasil Dangda to cause Indonesia some problems. So I do think that this will be a good, fast-flowing game. I think that there will be goals for both teams. It sounds like I'm sort of setting you up to bet money on this. Both teams know that really they've not got that much to lose, and they're just trying to avoid finishing second in the group. Because then they'll have to play Vietnam, probably. So I think both teams will go for this, both teams will attack. I think that both sides have gone with potentially the strongest lineup that they could have, which is good to see. Good to see players like Arhan back in the lineup, like I've already said. I think that the home advantage could be crucial here. Don't forget that the last time these two kind of faced each other in this tournament was that final, that 2020 final, which ended up being played obviously at the start of 2022, earlier this year, Indonesia's first game this year, and that did finish with a draw. And I think that on paper, look, Thailand, probably the favoured side, but for me, I do think home advantage will play a big factor here, and I'm backing either an Indonesia win or potentially a draw, which is contrary to what I said in the preview that we did for this tournament, which was that I think that Indonesia will go out in the semi-final stage, and I think they come second in the group. Ryan backed them to finish top of this group, and I think he could be right, actually, with the way that the games go. I think he could be right. I think Thailand, definitely slightly stronger side across the pitch, but I think the way that Shin Tae-yong has this Indonesia side playing, and the fact that they're at home, I don't know, I just feel like the stars are going to sort of align for this one, and I do back an Indonesia win in this one, quite strangely. I think that both teams will score. I'm hoping for something like a 3-1 or a 3-2. I'm really hoping for a high quality game in this one. And like I said, neither team's got anything to lose, so it would be quite upsetting if they didn't really go for it. I mean, really, you're looking at the rest of this group from a Cambodia, Philippines, and Brunei perspective. Obviously, Brunei have, dare I say, crashed and burned. They haven't crashed and burned, with the greatest of respect to them. They're just not good enough to compete at this level. They have scored one, but unfortunately they've conceded 17 in 3, so they sit sort of rock bottom in this group stage. But really, Philippines have been disappointing, haven't they? A huge defeat to Thailand. I thought that would be a far closer game, and defeat to Cambodia as well. So despite their win over Brunei, they're still sitting on a minus goal difference, played 3, only got 3 points. So you can pretty much rule them out, because based on today's game, they would need a massive, massive win over Indonesia in the final game to leapfrog them, and I just don't see it happening, particularly if Cambodia do manage to beat Brunei later on today. Then Cambodia could potentially find themselves sitting just off of a chance at qualification in Thailand in the final game. You've got to credit Cambodia for what they've managed to achieve. You know, alright, yeah, they've only played 2 games, but they lost only narrowly to Indonesia, and they beat the Philippines. And when they beat the Philippines, we thought, oh, maybe the Philippines are poor. But that second game for Cambodia, I think we saw, despite the catalogue of missed chances from Indonesia, that Cambodia have still got a little bit. So I expect Cambodia to win today and all but knock out the Philippines, who have ultimately been quite poor in this group stage. So how do I think it's going to end up? Based on after this game, I'm backing an Indonesia win here. I'm being quite bold. It's 50-50 in the vote in the minute. If you are watching, do put your vote in for who you think is going to win this one. No one back in a draw at the minute. We've got a split in terms of the fandom watching this video. Are you back in Indonesia or Thailand in this one? And let me just verbalise how I think this group is going to end up. I think that Indonesia will win today, and I think that they will win in their final game, which would make it a perfect group for them, which would be quite incredible actually. I'm not sure about today. Let me put it out there. I'm not sure about today, but I'm backing it with a home crowd and a good starting 11. I'm going to back it. I'm going to back both teams to score and Indonesia win in this one. Therefore, I think Indonesia will finish top of the group. I think that Thailand, despite defeat today, would still beat Cambodia in the final game, making them go through second. I think Cambodia will come third, Philippines fourth, and Brunei fifth, which would be an extremely disappointing campaign for the Philippines, it must be said. But it would mean that Indonesia and Thailand go through. And that, for me, I mean, that's not unexpected, by the way, as a top two, but I think that everyone thought that the Philippines would maybe run it a bit closer in that final game between Indonesia and the Philippines would be more important than it is going to end up. I also expect Vietnam to top Group B, which means that they would play Thailand in quite an important semi-final, and Singapore or Malaysia. Not sure who's going to get through in Group B, but one of those would face Indonesia. So really, not to try and oversell the importance of this group game, which might not ultimately mean that much, but I do think that whoever wins today avoids Vietnam in the semi-final, and so gives themselves a bit of a chance to get to the final. And that's no disrespect to Malaysia or Singapore, the sides that might get out of Group B, but I think you have to be realistic here and say Singapore have got injuries. Malaysia haven't been able to bring their players from JDT, they've not got their full strength squad, they've only been playing okay. I mean, I watched Singapore versus Laos, thought Laos were unlucky in that game. And so I think Indonesia or Thailand would both beat them. So I think whoever wins today has got a real shot of getting to the final. Because you would probably avoid Vietnam. So I think that this is an absolutely crucial game. All right, neither of these sides are probably going to go out. We've had a few more votes for the draw, so get your votes in for who you think is going to win this one. It's a split decision at the minute in terms of who people think are going to go through. Lineups are out, and as I've said before, we're not going to be able to do the full preview of this one, so we're going to wrap it up shortly. But if you are watching or you end up watching back just before kickoff, the link is in the chat. It is the pinned comment as well. But do get in the chat if you're watching along. We've got plenty of people watching. Who do you think is going to win this one and why? We've got 9 votes, most people favouring Indonesia for this one. There is a chance of a draw and a small chance of an away Thailand win. I have already said I think that Indonesia are going to win this game. I think that it will be both teams to score, Indonesia win, home advantage for the Garuda, and I think that that will almost, and I'm going to go quite big here, book them a place in the final. Diego's in the chat. Not sure I've seen you before in the chat, Diego. Thank you for joining us. I think Indonesia could edge it. Atmosphere is going to be electric. It is, absolutely. And that's part of the reason why I'm not going to be able to do a full watch along for this one, is because I am going to be watching the game and just kind of enjoying it myself, but I also have to step away for a bit, so I'm not even going to attempt it because I think that's unfair, but I have linked it in this chat here. But the atmosphere for this one is going to be enormous. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic game. Just looking at the groups once more, just double checking everything I've said so far. Of course, Thailand, the only team, the only thing that's really contrary to what I've said so far is that Thailand are the only team yet to concede in this tournament. Admittedly, they've played a poor Philippines side and Brunei, so you can't read too much into that. And it was Cambodia that scored against Indonesia in that hard-felt Indonesia win. But the atmosphere is going to be incredible for this one. Most people on the votes are backing that Indonesia win. I'm going out there on the record, putting myself out there, probably getting it wrong, and saying that I think Indonesia will get that home win, and I think that that will almost book them a place for the Garuda in the final. That's where I'm going to leave it today. You've got half an hour before kickoff. Go chill out, enjoy yourself. We're not going to be able to do a full watch along, but we will be back for watch alongs across the rest of this tournament, particularly moving on to the final match day. Obviously you've got Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore and Thailand, Cambodia are likely to be the big important games in that one. Vietnam probably will have booked their place already. So the start of January we'll be back for full watch-alongs. But if you've enjoyed this video, if you've been watching along, plenty of people are seeming to join just before the end, so I do apologise, I do have to duck away. Enjoy the match, I hope it's a great game, and don't forget to subscribe to DNQ because we've got more watch-alongs coming up, more match previews and all sorts of things. We will see you next time. Have a good one.